Be black. Be bold. Be innovative. Show the world equitable geo.
We're coming together as a collective to celebrate people of African descent, the diaspora, and talking about geospatial equity and justice.
You're listening to the North Star Gaze, a podcast with intimate stories from geo luminaries.
All right, so my friend Kevin,
Yes.
introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Kevin Carrington. I always think about this joke from Living Color back in the day. You know, it's like I got 5 jobs. I am a hospital executive at a global health system. And also I'm the founder of the nonprofit, the C3 Initiative, Inc., where we teach and we unlock the STEM potential inside of Black kids all over the world.
So let's get into it. When did you fall in love with GIS?
Ooh, movie reference. I love it. I love it. The brown sugar movie reference. I love it. You know, I think I've always been in love with GI. Oh, no. The first time I fell in love with it was I was that kid. My parents had the Encyclopedia Britannica, the blue hard book. You know, the blue hardback cover books. And that was my biggest connection to the world. And I know encyclopedia and maps don't always correlate, but for me, I saw a connection between knowledge and wherever it can be found in those books. And so I spent a lot of time in those, not knowing that later that, you know, the geographical information system concept be brought about where we can learn from data geographically. And I've always been a big fan of people, culture, how they live. And so it just made sense that it would navigate, it would grow from, you know, what I could learn about people around the world in these, you know, blue hardback books to traveling and then also to be able to use data to learn and grow.
So before we get into more of your story, what drew you to today's homecoming?
So, you know, outside of, you know, having the opportunity to speak and share a little bit about my nonprofit, I'd really say that the team at North Star has just been so supportive to me and my organization for a very long time. And when you are connected to like-minded people and surrounding people who have similar skills and similar passions and want to see the world do better and be better, it's easy to hop on a plane and come hang out, as I would say.
We definitely appreciate it. Okay, so doing this work, some people will look at the work that you do and say it's a hopeless endeavor. Where do you find the fortitude and the energy to keep going? Where did you find the wherewithal to even get started?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, my dad used to always say this to me, there's always a way. And it was in his way of teaching me that excuses are barriers that we build towards accomplishing or getting something done. And so for me, I would say I pulled a lot of that from my dad in just when you see something that needs to be done, it's your obligation to figure it out, not just do it, because sometimes when you try to do something, you'll always run into a barrier, but it's your job to figure it out. And so I think a lot of that I got from my father. To your comment about the hopeless endeavor, yeah, sometimes it does feel like it is hopeless. But I think that there is a difference between a situation that appears hopeless and the responsibility that we have to get it done. I feel like, you know, when it comes to tangible things like building a road that stretches from one end of the country to the next, it seems intangible, but we need transportation, so it's easy to do it that way. Well, how more important are our children? How more important are our future? And so for us, you know, especially at C3, we've contextualized it down to 1 of 1 million is a phrase that we have all the time. We're trying to get to fill a pipeline, the tech pipeline, with 1 million African-American kids who have learned this skill set and make sure the workforce doesn't have an excuse to say that these skilled individuals aren't available. But the reason we say 1 of 1 million is because our hope doesn't necessarily lie in the million. Our hope lies in the one. If we can get that one kid to be confident, realize their ability, be their authentic self and grow from their authentic self, and then solve problems from that space, we've done our job. So one makes, you know, at least taking that approach has truly made, has given us all the hope in the world.
All right. So let's talk about how. Let's frame this a little bit. So Kevin and I exist in a society that its framing tells us all the things we can't do, we're not allowed to do, all the things that we're barred from doing.
Wow. Yeah.
In the C3 initiative, how do you reframe that, and how do you create the space that as soon as a student walks in the door, they see and they feel the potential.
Yeah.
They feel that we trust them to succeed.
Yeah. I'm going to use your words, from one of the sessions that you were moderating when you were saying that the biggest lie, is that the biggest lie the devil told is to get people to think that he doesn't exist.
Right.
I think that is really where our responsibility and activities lie. Unfortunately, with Black kids, there's something we have to introduce them to before as well as the skills that we give them. What we found out is that they have these skills. Like I've met some of the most brilliant young people you will ever see, who the reality is they have never even seen the possibility of them being into those spaces. I'll give you one quick example. One of the C3s that we did, actually C3 we did with you guys, there were kids at a school in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. One of my buddies was a teacher at a school in Las Vegas. And he wrote me a letter. He said, Kevin, I have a few kids in my class. As a matter of fact, a majority of the kids in my class that have never even seen the ocean. I was flabbergasted by that. I was
so they weren't thrown in.
They weren't thrown in at all. They didn't even see it. And so we sent a charter bus to the school in Las Vegas to pick those kids up, drive them down the coast, and bring them to the expo. And for me, that's kind of where we start. We start with exposure, right? We expose them, and having amazing technicians and computer science and GIS capable individuals like yourself and Clinton and others, for them to see you I believe personally that it was the exact same as them seeing the ocean. It's almost like, you see the ocean, it's like, not only does it exist, it's beautiful. And I believe those kids have the same experience when they see, individuals like yourself and individuals like North Star team members and that represent these big corporations, and you guys are navigating in that space. I believe it's the same thing. It's like, not only do you guys exist, not only do we exist, but we're beautiful. And so just to kind of finally tie back to your question, we are exposing them to individuals and skill sets that actually exist. Like these are things that are happening. This is someone who has broken through those barriers that are preventing us from growing. And then we do have some real world conversations with them about what they would potentially face. Mm-hmm. And I would say one of the biggest things for me is, no one really wants to be surprised by a barrier. And so if we can at least tell them some of the things and be honest with them with some of the things they may face, whether it's opposition, whether it's systemic suppression, and when I say systemic, I mean, no one is saying it, but the system is set up that is there. And that's the box that you're talking about.
So let me ask you this question then. It's a balancing act, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're both parents of Black, I'm gonna get a little bit personal, Black children. How do you maintain that balance of telling your children about the systems and also keeping them confident?
Yeah. So that is, you almost pulled on the heartstring just a little bit. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But Black sons and daughters have unique experiences. And me, I'm a girl dad, so I'm a father of 2 Black women, and I hate the way the world treats them. I hate it. And so for me, I do everything in my power to remind them of who they are, remind them of why they are important. And I think that this is kind of my cocktail for them. Remind them of who they are, remind them of why they're important. They're little things that I have instilled in my daughters. Like in our house, you're not allowed to call someone out of their name.
Right.
Like that is the reason I pick something like that, is because it will happen to you.
It's the first start of dehumanizing.
That is, oh my gosh, that is so true. And so there are these moments that I want them to assess, like, hey, there are things I'm teaching you in the way that you treat yourself and the way you treat each other, that when you come into contact with it out there in the world, I tell them I'm raising decision makers. The decisions will be yours to make. Right now, I get to protect you. So there's some decisions I get to make for you, but soon you'll be making those decisions on your own. But I have conversations with them specifically around the one of not calling each other, something out of their name, is because when you experience it in the outside, there is a response for it. I have one daughter who's very outspoken. She's kind of that resistance with me. And then my oldest daughter is very quiet, internalizes everything. Like it's very, and for both of them, it's extremely important for them to live in place. Like, and I tell them all the time, you're beautiful, you're amazing, you're wonderful. All those things are great, but how do you stand up for yourself? And I'll even go as far as to say this. I've never been taught appropriate coping mechanisms, right? And so one of the things that I do for them is in, affirmations, really pouring into them, letting them know who they are. And because they're kids, you also have to let them know who they are not, because they are still trying to kind of define and figure out who they are. So letting them know who they're not, letting them know who they are. But then there's this kind of other side of it. It's like, I want you to know what you would experience. And as we go through life, I point those things out. Not that the oppression or systemic barriers are applied towards them, but I want them to see them out in the public as they apply to anyone. So when, you see a situation, we're talking about water fountains in the South, talking back to Atlanta, and I explained to them, it's like, once upon a time, you could not drink out of that water fountain. I let them know about that truth, because then they get to say, at the end of that, that story, you got to also tell the other part of it, that someone fought to make sure that that water fountain is available for everyone.
Yes. Yes.
And so now they know the struggle, but they also know the overcoming. And I just tell them all the time, there is going to come a time where your fight is going to happen. So prepare for it and just know how to do it with grace. And so, it's a long answer, but it touches me because I really do hate the way the world treats them.
So two things in the time that I've known you, two things stick out to me. One is founder to founder, you have a full-time job and you believe in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
What are some pieces of advice that you would give to young professionals who have a fire in their belly to start something like a nonprofit, like North Star C3, right? What piece of advice would you give to them to get started, or to take this passion, this faith of a mustard seed, and how do you grow that?
Yeah. So we get similar questions like this from kids that we work with all the time, and everybody's experience is different. So I always tell people, don't try to connect yourself to what someone else is doing. First off, like, I have a full-time job, a nonprofit, and a company. And that is not, I would tell everyone that is the worst. That is the worst model to follow. But the thing that I do pour into is, one, identifying that what you create has value. And if you identify that it does have value, it is okay to pour everything you have into it. I think oftentimes, especially when you're talking to young people, whether in high school or even in college, time is on their side. So when you, and I wish this was kind of poured into me at their age, but the reality is you have something, this beautiful power that you can start a company, start an idea, go fight after, do some community organizing, or build a nonprofit, or you have a for-profit idea, you can build it. And let's say it fails after 20 years of trying. You still got a whole half a life, to go. So, my word to any individual or any kid who has an idea is go for it. Now, there's a lot that goes into go for it, right? There's a lot that goes into go for it. I always tell people, learn your industry, really understand the industry. And the skill set is one thing, but I always tell people adding value is far more important than just doing a task.
Right.
So if you would just sit in your mind and say, well, what is the value that you're adding? Understand what that value is. And if you understand what that value is and it happens to be differentiated amongst the other people who are doing it, you might have something, go for it, you know?
Question.
Yeah.
Question. So I know Clinton will tell this story that when we first had the idea of North Star, he gave me a call. Tell about the people you work with. Don't do it alone, right? Sometimes because we exist in the context of American rugged individualism society, we are people of a community of village. And so when I think about North Star and the people and the mission, I am so grateful that I get the privilege of working with these people. So tell us about the value of not doing it alone and doing it with the right people.
Absolutely. Well, you actually pointed at something that is really, that I believe and believe in and stand on. Culturally, that's not us. That rugged outback, like one man Lone Ranger against the world, that's not us. We are very communal people, and there's nothing. And I always reference back to this concept of Ubuntu. You know, this "I am because you are" mentality is. And I'm just speaking to Black people right now. It's like we exist together. It's how we exist. Now, I will even tell you, even in business, they would tell you, make sure you find a good team. But when it comes to Black people, we do this differently. Like, this is us working together, pulling different ideas, pulling different mindsets, people who can see different things. I tell people all the time that, you know, diversity is not a metrics. It's a mindset. That's really what it is. It's like, at the end of the day, it's like this idea of bean counting how many people from different backgrounds are in your organization. That doesn't help you with anything. It's the idea that the mindset is, I need to make sure I'm surrounded with diverse enough thinking that the things I don't see, we can see. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Now, last, to add a little bit of whimsy.
Yeah.
Using your vast knowledge and skills from your C3 organization, how would you approach surviving the zombie apocalypse?
Oh, now, you know I'm a big sci-fi. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a huge sci-fi fan. So the first thing, guess using my C3. Using my C3 knowledge. Okay, I know you got me. Okay. So using a C3 knowledge, I mean, there's preparation I feel like you would have to put into this, right? So the first thing I would do is we would have to design some type of underground structure would be my first mindset.
So you're a builder.
Oh yeah, I'm very much so a builder. We design some underground structure, and it would have to have multiple entrances and exits so that we can still traverse the land. I think that's really important. You got to make sure you have some defense and protection there. You got to make sure all your resources are accounted for. So water, we need ways to grow underground. So I personally would activate the C3 protocol, get some of the kids to start designing concepts for ecosystems that can be created underground. I'd get the C3 agents working on how do we access the aqueducts of water that are flowing underneath the earth and get them to flow up into our underground structure. I'd also have to task some of our C3 agents on communication so that we can make sure we're communicating through the group. If the zombies came through, I'd make sure the C3 agents were with me so we can.
And here I am. I'm worried about food. Can I get used to the taste of human flesh, nice and sliced up and mixed with veggies?
We could grow potatoes, girl. You don't gotta eat the people.
Oh, don't get me to talking about a garden. But Kevin, thank you.
Thank you.
All
It's been great.
And on that note, thank you to our listeners. I want to thank the sponsors of the 2023 Homecoming Conference event, which was held on Howard University's campus. Thank you, National Geographic Society, National Academy's Gulf Research Program, Mapping Black California, Hope and Heal, and Spatial GIS. We also want to give a special thanks to our guests. Thank you for trusting us with your stories. Shannon, Sandra, Kevin, Margot, Frank, Jen, Dr. Luberz, Carrie, Dr. Graham, Gloria, Michael, Eric, Sky, Nick, Dr. Yaboa Kwarkun, Veronique, and Dawn. We also want to thank Howard University for allowing us to present in the iconic browsing room. And to the North Star team, thank you, Shakanda, Raisha, Clinton, Erica, Yolanda, and our volunteers and student ambassadors. Thank you also to KMG. Audio is produced by Cherry Blossom Production, and I'm Aisha, your host and the executive producer of the inaugural season of the North Star Gaze podcast, which is based on the 2023 Homecoming Conference event.